Happy Easter, everyone. It's Sunday, April 12th, 2020, and welcome to our very first episode of the Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott. And we have a special guest this week. It's award-winning actor and comedian Raj Sharma. And welcome, Ken and Glenn. Oh, and me, a guy named Scott.
Oh, happy Easter, gentlemen.
Happy Easter. Wow. I can't believe it. We're here. It's the inaugural kickoff.
Well, goodness gracious, we've been working at it for a month, Ken.
You guys are, both of you have been on. I thought, okay, I'm going to surprise them and I'm going to dress up in my Easter Sunday best. And because they both have been on TV and I never have. So and here you guys dressed up too. So
well, visually it looks like Ken Walls and the Two Undertakers.
That's great. But what a way to go out, huh? At least we're looking at our finest. I figured I had to wear my Easter best today since I watched church in my pajamas.
Hey, Ken, tell us what the show's about. Tell the folks that are listening in what our vision is and why we opted to do this program in the first place.
You want me to share that?
Yeah, I do, baby. You had your own thing rolling and I came and jumped aboard your ship, and then we saw Scott standing out on the side of the freeway holding his hand like this, and we picked his butt up. And so here we go.
Well, first I want to say, man, I am so honored to be on here with you two. Both of you are legends and I'm a legend in my own mind. And it's awesome, man. I'm like blown away to be here with you. I'm honored, for real. I am. So thank you guys, both of you.
You betcha. When we started 4 weeks ago, my good buddy, our mutual friend, Bob Donnell, and Carrie, you're the first person we get to say hello to from our audience. So thank you for being number one. You've been with us for the last several weeks while we've been building this mothership. But Bob Donnell was actually the one responsible for introducing Ken and myself to one another. And we just became instant brothers and started doing these live streams just as this is unfolding now. And we did it for several weeks. We had a number of different guests. And somewhere at about week 3, Scott McCain came in and we were blown away. Frankly, nothing shy of blown away by Scott. And not only does he have the voice we hope we hear in the hallways of heaven someday, but everything he had to say was as beautiful as his voice is. And so we decided this is our guy,
Yeah.
But we were fixed on this title of the Ken and Glenn Show, and Scott just doesn't rhyme.
It doesn't.
So what do we do? And we came up with this title and a guy named Scott. And frankly, I think he'll be launched more than Ken and I will, because it's a fun description to not just be Scott, but a guy named Scott.
I certainly preferred that to changing my name to Sven.
Well,
that was the other alternative they offered. I preferred it the way this was. So.
Oh, that's funny. Well, so, we've touched a lot of lives over the last 4 or 5 weeks. I don't even know how long is it. I don't remember.
4 weeks.
Okay. Geez, that's insane. It seems like a lifetime ago. And so we've gotten on a lot of live streams. We've, put out a lot of positive messages and energy, and, people are in this lockdown right now. And, I got to tell you, I think that Easter Sunday is the absolute perfect day, because we talked about it's Easter, but man, what a perfect day for the birthing of such a wonderful thing that we want to do here, and that's to bring positive energy and a positive message to the world. There's my buddy Frank Crenity, one of the freaking best people on planet Earth. I just want to give him a shout out. But we want to bring a lot of positive energy and messages and guests, other guests besides us, to this show. And so, can I tell the story about last night?
I wish you would.
It would be a perfect segue. But like Glenn calls me and he goes, dude, we have a problem. And I go, I'm going through my head. I'm like, oh, hold it. We got the video. What's the problem? What could it be? And you're like, we haven't got a guest for tomorrow. And I go, oh God, that's a problem. and I'm like, gee, many Christmas, who can we get? And we start talking and you're like, let me look at my Rolodex. And I'm sure your Rolodex is like the who's who of show business. So, I got to tell you that it's a blessing that you pulled out your Rolodex and you want to talk about what happened next.
Well, in all fairness, one of the reasons we were so lax about it is because every guest, I teach a lot about the 4 rooms of consciousness, the 4 different mindset types. And I'm not going to get into that tonight, but I'll just say that the top level is the room of inevitability, where people just say yes. And what all of our guests have in common is basically minimal to zero warning that they were being invited to be on our show. And that's been that way all month long. We never let anyone know several days in advance, hey, we're going to be doing this thing. In fact, you and I just would talk to each other usually earlier in the day and say, you want to go on live tonight? Yeah. And we would do it, and we'd make a simple phone call. And I just hang out with yes people. And so we didn't figure there would be a problem finding anyone. And there wasn't, because Raj was the very first person I called. And he, like all the others, said yes. In fact, he was so emotional about it. He said, I'm really honored to be there. And Raj is an amazingly talented man. I do want to give a shout out to Christopher Rausch, who was probably our biggest recurring guest. And I love his energy. I love his program. I love his eagerness and optimism. And Chris, thank you for helping us discover what it is we really wanted to do. It is very much appreciated.
And there's Bob Donnell up on the screen right now.
There's Bob. Love you, buddy.
Yeah, I love Bob.
Hey guys, we have a guest, don't we?
We do have a guest. Now would be about a perfect time to bring him on, don't you think? We have with us an award-winning actor and comedian. You've seen him on television. You've seen him in the biggest comedy clubs in the nation. Let's bring on our first guest on our first show. Here's Raj Sharma.
Hey, hold on. Let's do this first. Hold on. I got something to show you first.
I'm from Texas, man. I played football in high school. I played football in high school. Only problem with me was my freshman year of high school, I was 5'3" and 96 pounds. Yeah, the first time I got hit, I saw Jesus. Which is okay for most of you, but I'm Hindu. Do you realize how hard you have to be hit to see somebody else's God? I like how half of you got the joke and the other half's like, he's not Mexican? Only at the airport. Straight through security. I know, right? I just keep walking.
So that's Raj Sharma. Here we go, Raj.
Bring him on.
Hey,
Raj.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Raj, part of what we're talking about is you heard Glenn say it so eloquently in terms of talking about life and talking about bringing great things to people's lives. And one of the things that so many of my buddies that are comics talk about, but the audience doesn't see, is all the work that you did and time you put in to get where you are now. And I'm wondering if you could talk just a little bit about some of how did you get into comedy, and what was the road to get you where you're playing clubs in LA and shows and everything else that help us know who you are?
And before you tell your story, let me just tell you that you're my pretty baby boy who has a pretty face, and we sure would love to see it. Cuddle on up, baby.
Oh, okay,
Cuddle on up with the camera.
I'll just turn the hat backwards because I didn't do my hair. We're locked down. There's no reason to do hair. I mean, I felt pretty just putting the sweatshirt on today because it's normally just a t-shirt and shorts in the house. So I got dressed up for here.
Thank you, brother.
But I was bullied a lot as a kid, and I found that comedy was a way to kind of stop. It takes a special kind of person to still hit you if you're laughing. So that's where that came from. I remember it's probably 8 or 9 years old, and I used to read. My dad would get the Reader's Digest, and I would read the jokes in the back, and then go to school the next day and tell them as if they were my own jokes. And that's how that started. And then I realized I started doing voices. I started doing impressions and things like that, and the girls really liked it. And it wasn't like a dating thing in the sense that, but if the girls liked me, it made the guys who liked pushing me around or beating me up or whatever, it made that less because those guys liked these girls. And so then those girls liked me. So if they did anything to me, it'll upset those little girls. And then it would be a little difficult fighting moment for them. So that's where it developed. And then I was about 11 or 12, and my parents had gone to a dinner party, and my cousin had moved from India to live with us because he was studying how to build computers. Go figure, Indians and computers. And he rented Eddie Murphy Delirious, and I was absolutely gobsmacked when I saw this. And years later, my cousin would tell me that it wasn't surprising that I became a comedian because everybody else was watching the same show, and everybody was laughing. And he said, "You look like a student watching a professor give a lecture." Because I would ask, I'm like, "Why did he say that here? Why did he use that word instead of this one?" And then it was, "Does he get paid to do this?" And when they're like, "Oh my God, he's getting paid so much money," but then life happens, and as a good South Asian kid, your mother tells you to go to college and become a doctor. And so I went to college and I was studying pre-med, and I'd done theater through high school and junior college, and I was good at math and science. I just didn't want that lifestyle, that structured lifestyle. And for those people that can do it, I'll stitch you a cape because you're a hero to me, a superhero. And I wanted to be an actor. And I called my dad, who I think secretly wanted to be an actor and a singer when he was a kid. And he said, the only thing he said was, when I told him, I was like, "Dad, I'm pursuing acting instead of medical school." He kind of chuckled and goes, "Don't tell your mother." And that was the end of the discussion. And I kept acting. And then I got done with college and I moved back to Dallas, and there wasn't really acting work for Indian men back in those days because I would go into these auditions and they're like, such and such character is not Indian. I'm like, it doesn't have to be, but it was already this preconceived idea that Indian people will play Indian roles. So I went in, as all good children of immigrants do. I went to the family business. I joined the family business, which was staffing. It was staffing nurses in hospitals. So there was no creative outlet. There was no sort of fun. It was picking up a phone, put it down, answering it, calling somebody back. That's all it was. And I ended up dating a nurse who knew how much I loved stand-up comedy. And one day she takes me for my Christmas present we went to the Improv to watch a show. And on stage, I walk in and I see Paul Varghese, who's a Dallas comedian. He's in Dallas. He's one of the most brilliant comedians I've ever seen till this day. He's wonderful and one of my best friends. And I was like, "Oh my God, there's an Indian comic. This is amazing." And my brother, my older brother, he used to do banquets of charity to raise money for juvenile diabetes. He's a type 1 diabetic. And every year he got comics. And I said, "I don't know how you find him, but you got to get this guy, Paul Verghese. I mean, just call the improv club. Maybe they could put you in touch with him. So I'm sitting out in my cubicle, in my office, just staring out the window, waiting for anything exciting to happen. And I see this green Camry pull up, and out comes Paul Verghese. And he comes in to sign his contract because my brother got him for the banquet. And I said, brother, can I just pick your brain for 5 minutes? And he goes, I have to be at work. He goes, I have to be back at work in 30 minutes. So that's as much time as I have. So 3.5 hours later, and after he got fired from Tower Records for not coming back to work, he said, you got to get into this, man. You got to start doing stand-up. And I was like, I know what I want to talk about. I just don't know how to structure a joke. And he said, there's a workshop at the Addison Improv, and it's taught by a man named Dean Lewis. And I knew Dean from junior college, and we did not like each other. We from junior college theater. We did not like each other. In fact, we almost got into a fist fight. That was the last time I'd seen him, and now I'm going to go into this man's class to learn stand-up. Of all people, he's the one teaching it. And I didn't want to go. And the girl that I was dating physically dressed me and was like, you need to go. The first class is free. If you guys don't get along and you don't like it, come back. And I walked in, and he handed me workbook number 1, which meant that every week I was the first one to go on stage and pitch my 3 new ideas, my 3 new bits. And I finished that class, and I hugged him. And I was like, I'm so sorry that I ever felt that way about you. And he said, forgot it the minute it happened. And that was, will be April 14th will now be 18 years, right? 18 years? Yeah, 18 years of doing stand-up comedy.
Wow.
That is beautiful, buddy. Can you tell us real quickly, let the audience know how it is we wound up crossing paths? And then I want to find out how life has been for you.
So there's a phenomenal comedian and actor. He's out here as well, Tone Bell. And Tone and I would go out after shows and have a couple of drinks at the end of the night and kind of like wind down. And he started talking about the show that he was watching, and I immediately recognized it because it's a show I'm watching, and it's called 24. And we just always thought how much of a boss Agent Pierce was. And so that's what we called him. We didn't call him by the actor's name. We said Agent Pierce. And a really good friend of mine, Jarrah, came over to watch one of the season finale. I think it was a season 6 finale or season 4. I can't remember which one it was. But she came to watch the season finale, and we're just watching. She had never seen the show before, so we kind of filled her in on it, and we told her how amazing Agent Pierce was. And then Glenn's face pops up on the screen, and she goes, oh my God, that's my godfather. And Tone and I became even bigger fans of Jarrah at that moment. We were like, what do you mean? You know Agent Pierce? And she said, yeah, that's my godfather. And I thought she was kidding. And she wasn't, because I'm sitting at the Mucky Duck in Addison with a buddy of mine, and Jarrah comes up and goes, I need you right now. We have to leave. Let's go. And I said, what's going on? I thought something had happened. She goes, it's a surprise. I'll tell you. I can't tell you about it, but let's go to the beer store, pick up some beers, and we got to go to this thing. And she had me at beer store. So we get to this house in Dallas, and ring the doorbell, and the door opens, and Agent Pierce is standing in front of me. And we went to see the screening of a film that Glenn you'd made, Flutter. And it was one of the coolest moments ever, because we chatted after that quite a bit after the screening was done, and so much so when Glenn knows this, and I told you guys that I walked out and cried, because it was one of the coolest moments to meet. Because I always say you never want to meet your heroes or your idols or whatever, and that's very true, especially in this profession of acting and stand-up, because not everybody that's nice on screen is nice off screen. And he was just what can you say? He exudes love. He brings love. He brings light and energy and magic to everywhere he goes. And just to be consumed and surrounded in that light was life-changing. And then it just, what happened is Glenn's in town. Do you want to go shoot pool? yeah, let's go shoot pool with, the guy that's been in every Transformers movie but one. Yeah, let's do that. That'd be awesome.
Well, Raj, I've never told you this, but in all fairness, I still would prefer to this day that you continue to call me Agent Pierce.
Yes, sir, Agent Pierce.
I know you've been doing the Glenn thing for a while, but I wanted to let you know it's a little on the annoying side. Hey, man, we just want to welcome you. We want to welcome you to our gathering. We are just excited to have you here. We're excited that we've got so many people that have been supportive for the last few months. And Ken, do we have some questions that are coming in? And Raj, you're certainly welcome to be part of the interactive dance with the audience.
Yeah, I don't see any questions as of right now, but I want to throw it out there that if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the comments and we will definitely answer any questions. So, I do now, Raj, you've been on a couple of have you been in a couple of movies or TV shows?
I've done some independent stuff. I've done some TV, but it's mostly Glenn will know this. LA is fun when you get picked up for a pilot, but it's kind of a bummer when they don't air. So I've had a couple of those, but I did a remake of the Hollywood Shuffle with an all South Asian cast. It was called the Bollywood Shuffle. It was a lot of fun, and that was I think that released in 2010. And then I've done Laughs on Fox, and I've done late night stuff. So just mostly my stuff is mostly stand-up related. But it's so much fun. I get to do theater still, which was nice before all of this craziness happened. And now I just get to watch, all the shows that Glenn's in.
And just for the sake of the audience, so that everyone's on the same page and knows the expression pilot. Yeah. Raj actually is referring to the first show of any series is referred to as the pilot episode. And the studios don't spend a lot of money unless they have a built-in hit, i.e. Star Trek and so forth, where they know they have a following already. Star Trek does not need to do a pilot. They know that it will have a built-in viewership. But he said to me years ago that he got detained at the airport.
Yeah.
You remember this, Raj?
Yeah, I tell this on stage now.
Yeah, so let them know what happened at the airport.
I was in Tampa, Florida, and I had gotten a call to do a pilot for CBS. So I was going to spend a couple of days and just check out the city, and that's not, I've never been to Tampa before, but that's what happens with us when we go to the clubs. Is we land, the club picks us up, we go straight to the condo or the hotel, and then we go to shows at night, and then during the day you just kind of find somewhere to go eat, or you don't really get to see much of the city. There's not a lot of sightseeing in any city. I've been to Boston a dozen times. I've never seen anything about Boston, which is sad. And I'm at the airport, and I'm on the phone with my manager, and I guess I looked like I was rushing, or I was worried, or in a rush. And this very sweet lady, well, I say when they get to that nosy age, where they're like in their late 60s and they want to just know everything about the strangers around them. She said, "Are you from Tampa?" And I said, "No, I live in Los Angeles. I really need to get home as quick as possible." And she said, "Why?" And I am not thinking that we're in an airport. I'm a brown man with a beard. And I said, "I have to shoot a pilot."
Oh no.
And she looked at me, she looked at me and she goes, "Dear God, why?" And I go, "Because it's pilot season."
Didn't you tell her? Didn't you say I try to shoot at least one a year?
Yeah, I said I try to shoot as many I can, but I want at least one a year. I want my habit to be shooting one a year. And she turns to the rest of the gate and she goes, "They have a season." And I look up and I see the TSA guy walking, and I'm like, I know, I'm not making a flight. And he's losing his mind. He's laughing and he's walking towards me, and I know what's about to happen. And he pulls me over and he says, "Let me talk to you about this." And he goes, "Jesus, man, why would you say that at the airport?" And I go,
is one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. Hey, Ken, Bob Donnell wrote something up here. He was talking about the pathway to my heart.
Yeah.
No, you don't. I don't. If anybody can sing karaoke and sober, you're again. That's another superhero. Doctors and karaoke singers, because the confidence that you have to trust in that ability is something I don't mess with.
It's a shame we don't have any music here, but I do like my karaoke. I love my karaoke.
Okay, so then what you need to do is next time you're back in LA, is go to Culver City and go over to the Boardwalk 8. Because
I know Boardwalk 8. I love that place. It's over on the west side of town.
So that's where I would go in. That was my local spot, and I didn't know that you couldn't talk trash about anybody that was on stage, like even if they were terrible. And I got to be friends with the bartender. He said, "You can't." I was like, "God, man, that guy's voice is awful," and it legitimately was. I was up there, and he's like, "You can't say that. I'll give you one warning, and after that, I'll have to ask you to leave." That's why that's such a tight knit community of those karaoke singers, because no one's told any of them that they're bad.
Right.
But there are some that are like legitimately should be superstars, should be pop stars. But no, I don't sing. I would love to watch Glenn sing. What is your go-to karaoke song? Everybody's got one.
Well, I've got a few, but I'm especially fond of a song that no one knows the title of.
Okay.
But it's called "For What It's Worth." And everyone knows the song. I mean, it's a crowd pleaser. As soon as you start singing it, people jump in, and it's always a fave, and they love to sing along. Do you know the song by
Buffalo Springfield?
That would be correct. Buffalo Springfield, 1967.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Which is, I think, when I first started singing it was in 67. I was 8 years old, and I was humming to it at least, if I didn't know all the words.
I only know the famous song that they play in every like 60s, late 60s movie from Buffalo Springfield, which is
That's it.
Song?
Yep,
Wow.
that's it.
So hey, we do have a question from Mike Scott, and
I was hoping you'd come back to that. This is a great question.
it is. And I don't know if he wants to know from Raj or from each one of us or somebody specific.
Let's make it a panel question.
Yeah. So you guys go first.
If I'm like, I'll watch. I watch stand up if I'm having a bad day, just to see what's new, what's out there, what people are talking about, so that I don't cross over and talk about something else. But my favorite thing in the world, and people ask me all the time what makes me laugh and what picks me up when I'm having a bad day. And I would like to say that on stage, I think my material is very clever, and I think it's very witty. But I love watching people fall down. The videos of people falling down, that I will cry laughing. There's especially one where there's a gymnast. It's a guy, and he's running, and he's going to do the vault or the pommel horse or something, and his foot slips off the ramp, and he goes chest first into the pommel horse. And if you watch in slow motion, you can see the chalk fly off his hands, and it just makes my heart. That, and I have a very sweet dog that I take for a walk. So, and he makes me the happiest. He's the sweetest little thing. And we rescued him from the Yulin Festival in China, where they were going to cook his mother and father. Yeah. And so he makes my day. And obviously, people falling.
Yeah. Wow.
And then every show that Glenn's in. So that makes me, because I always say this because I'll turn to somebody and go, I know that guy.
Glenn, you're mute. Oh, there you are.
Everything's good. So, Raj, just to make sure that I understand this. So, in summation, the failure of others brings you tremendous joy.
No. It's not a failure. It's the accidental mishap. It's the mishap of others that brings me sheer joy.
Scott, what you got? What do you do during times like this if you're having a rough time?
I watch Raj videos, basically. Now, we talked about this on an earlier thing. One of the things that I believe is that worry is negative goal setting.
Mhm.
And so when I catch myself having a bad day, I literally discipline myself to write down what I'm worried about. I literally discipline myself to say, what is it that I'm thinking? Because I think what happens is when we're having a bad day, we start to worry, and then that starts to spiral. And it never gets better. It always gets worse. The more, you might think you got money problems. Well, then the next thing you can picture them coming, throwing you out of your house and, getting fired from work and repoing your car. And the more you think about it, the worse it gets. So part of what we have to do is to stop that cycle. And when you have a bad day, you acknowledge that you're having something negative happening. You write it down, and then you ask yourself the question, okay, if this is what I don't want, what do I want?
Right.
And it moves you toward the pathway of getting things done that will be positive rather than being caught in the negative spiral.
I'm also a believer in the old saying that if you say it out loud, the universe will conspire with you.
Yeah.
So when I'm having a bad day or if I'm feeling down, out loud, we'll just say thank you for your blessings, because I can walk down the streets, even in a nice place like where I live in Sherman Oaks, and I can see somebody that's having a much worse time than myself. And so just to let the universe know that I'm grateful for all I have, even though it might be a bad day, or I might have lost work, or I might have not booked a gig, or the pilot got canceled. I can always just say thank you, because I think that the universe then thanks you back.
So what I will do on days like that is to recognize, and I love this, guys, I recognize that there is no such thing as an intrinsically flawed day. There's no such thing. There isn't such a thing as a bad day. What there is having a bad experience within a day. And the example I mean is that while people are quick to label a day bad, it occurs to me that not only on that same day, but possibly in that same moment, somebody else is experiencing winning the lottery, for example.
Oh.
Someone else is having their first kiss. Someone is losing their virginity and they're not upset about it, right? So there are a lot of things that are going on. And for me, it's an opportunity to direct my thoughts in a manner that reminds me that today is a celebration for somebody. And it's probably a celebration for a lot of people. And I choose to nominate myself to be one of the people that is having that kind of experience. And it's not avoidance. It's certainly not denial. It's just that I understand the metaphysical law of that which we focus on increases. So I am very, very meticulous even about where I allow myself to place my attention, knowing in advance that if I place it here, it's going to expand, which actually is the root cause for how this show came to be in the first place, because I didn't want to place my sole attention on the evening news. I just didn't want to do it because I didn't want that to be the condition that expands. There's plenty of time for me to check in with the news later, and I can see the tote boards at the end of the day and be aware of that and certainly be compassionate. But I really think it's up to us to decide. I want to take this just one step further and say that the media has a major role in this when we're greeted, in the morning drive time and a DJ will come on the air and say, oh, it's a gloomy Monday out there today, when actually all that's going on is that it's raining. And I don't know when in our evolutionary development rain equals gloom. And so this is just an interesting thing about how we are inculcated with these belief systems. And I'll tell you what really would be gloom is life minus rain. Like if rain ceased to exist for all of us, you want to see some new level complaining. That would be problematic. So I try not to jump aboard the complaint train because I think it's a bad idea. And life is brief enough as it is. I want to spend my time feeling as good as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Totally agree. When I'm having a bad moment, I try to, realize that first, it's just a moment. And second, you cannot experience depression, sadness, or anything like that when you're focused on gratitude. Typically, if I get upset, it's because I'm fearful that I'm going to lose something or I'm not going to get something that I want or whatever it is. So I bust out a piece of paper and I write out some positive affirmation, I am statements, and I'll write out things that I am grateful for in my life. I don't do it on paper normally. I use my iPad and Apple Pencil, but I write out in a list. I have a special file on my iPad that is called gratitude, and I go to that, and it's locked so nobody can get in and access all of my notes. But I go in, I enter my code, and I open a new note, and I start writing out things that I'm grateful for. And it's amazing to me how first utterly simple that is to do. It really is a simple thing to do. And yet most people are so programmed with past life experiences to make them want to feel this negativity that we literally pour it upon ourselves. And so I really focus on trying not to live in that. I try to focus on, living in the gratitude.
As the late great Jim Rohn said, that which is easy to do is also easy not to do, which is why most people don't do it.
That's right.
And Ken, I was thinking of that when you were saying that. It is easy to pull out that piece of paper and to write down what's bothering you. It is easy to have the perspective that Glenn talked about. It is easy to go to your gratitude list, but it's so easy to do. The vast majority of people in the world won't do it. And therefore, we need to be the exceptional difference. We need to be the folks that will do what it takes to take control of our day and to take control of our life.
And, Scott, if I can piggyback on that, I've noticed a tendency for there is a prototype out there that uses the catchphrase, it's easier said than done, right? It's easier said than done, not knowing, in their defense, not knowing that it is that position that is determining that for them, because they've decided that it's going to be difficult. It's easier said than done. So that's a belief system that actually gets in the way. There's another huge tip that can really be utilized, and it's not by special appointment. It doesn't mean that you've been uniquely gifted to comprehend this. It's available to all people at all times. And that is if you're really feeling under the weather, whether it's whatever, some kind of emotional weather, we'll call it that. But if you're feeling down, I don't know of a bigger way to shift gears than to be of service, right? To just be of service.
Yep.
Or even I recommend this, and people think I'm joking until they know me and realize I'm not joking. I can't recommend highly enough doing something that is really non-linear, like filling your belly button with ranch dressing and dipping carrots and celery into it while watching a football game, because this is something that the average person would not resort to during a normal day. And if you did see them behaving this way, you would assume that they were psychologically impaired or that something was really, really out of whack. And so sometimes reverting back to that playfulness that we last knew when we were kids can be tremendously healing. And I'm a big advocate of this. And I talk about it with my students all the time, is do something that's fun, that's nonlinear, and that you in your deepest heart of hearts know has never been done before. And there are a lot of examples of that.
Glenn, one thing you remind me, one thing I used to do, I haven't done it for a while. One thing I used to do was to sit on the edge of my bed and put my pants on both legs at the same time.
That a baby.
That way, when somebody say, "Well, he puts his pants on the same way you do, one leg at a time," no, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
I really did do that.
And Glenn taught when I was in the acting classes, which I was going to surprise you by coming back to the class after I'd done my last month of road work, and then all of this hit, and now nobody can leave. But it's one thing that whenever I go into an audition, I always think of him. Because he said that, I think you went into an audition with syrup in your shoes.
That's where the mission started, was with syrup in my shoes. Yes.
And so every time I go into an audition, and because they're nerve wracking, because as they used to call it, he said meetings, they're not auditions, they're meetings. Right. Because now you're evening the playing field, which I always love. So every time I go into a meeting, I always think my shoes are filled with syrup, like that. They're not, but I try to feel that way. And it takes me away from that nervousness of an audition or not getting it or not. But I just love the idea of putting syrup in your shoes and going into an audition.
Well, I got to tell you, it's time for you to break down, brother, and put some actual syrup in some actual shoes. And don't just sit around trying to imagine what it would be. It can't possibly be as effective.
No way.
I'll have to find the right pair of shoes. Not just every shoe. Not just every shoe deserves syrup.
So I want to give you guys yet another example of this, Scott. I know you'll appreciate it because in the entertainment field, you know what a big part of our business headshots play, right? So everyone's got an 8x10, and I go back so long ago that 8x10s were in black and white only, as in 100%. And if anyone ever presented a color picture, they'd kick them out of the industry. They'd tell them, they would call the agent and say, your client's an idiot. They don't know what they're doing because they presented a color photo.
Wow.
So I would have actors, I've been teaching acting for 35 years. I would have actors come to me and say, Glenn, I have never liked a single headshot of mine, ever. They're just dreadful. And I'd say, well, let me take a peek. They'd show them to me, and invariably they were, in fact, dreadful. And I said, well, no argument out of me on this, but let me show you how we're going to fix that. And I would suggest, for real, I would suggest that they create for themselves 2 vats of Jell-O. Make 1 lemon and 1 strawberry, but 2 vats of Jell-O. And you're going to roll up your pant legs, and you're going to stand in each vat of Jell-O with your bare feet. Now, the camera is way up above, torso and above, so the camera will never see it, or maybe it does, meaning that it sees evidence of it. It turns out that someone, when photographed standing in Jell-O, especially if they're not a child, if they're a grown human being standing in Jell-O, it changes their entire essence. And their photo is completely relaxed. I think more people should do it on the evening news, but it's very powerful. And then they would show me the end result, and it was massively different from the ones they were so displeased with. So again, a nonlinear behavioral shift.
That's funny. I literally have my feet in a tub of Jell-O right now.
Well, and that's why I've always considered you to be an obedient student, Ken. What have you been to my class online for 2 weeks and you've already got?
He's already doing
on?
that.
That's beautiful, man.
What a teacher.
That's beautiful. Well, you know, there's a lot going on out there, and we certainly seek to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And we invite all of you to think, again, to echo what a guy named Scott said. I remember only moments ago when a guy named Scott said that, you know, that we can make a difference. And he said, and I so completely agree, it's not about what we can no longer do. It's not about what we can no longer do. It's about what we can do. What can we do in this moment? And sometimes, and this has come up a lot. Hello, Yasmin. This has come up a lot in the last several weeks, which is that I think when you're feeling overwhelmed, and many of you are perhaps, it's certainly, I'll even go with the expression, it makes sense. It makes sense. If you were, first of all, if you were ever leaning toward feeling overwhelmed, I would think now would be the time. It makes tremendous sense. But if you compartmentalize, instead of thinking of the whole forecast, which maybe is not overly optimistic, maybe you can't handle hearing things like we may not be going back for several months to work or whatever, and begin to downsize it to this compartmentalizing technique of what I know is I'm going to do the next 5 minutes really well. And then maybe I'm going to do the Ken and Glenn show with a guy named Scott for the next hour, or however much we have left, 45 minutes. I'm going to do that really well. And I'm not going to try to address anything outside of this until I get this wrapped and put a bow tie around it, that I have done this task and I've done it well. That way, at the end of the day, I am able to lay my head on my pillow knowing that I can call this day good. I can call it beautiful and put it in the history books as such. And over time, we begin to accumulate this stretch and we go, you know what? I have used some technique to build a life that I'm very satisfied with. And then all we've done is obliterate the darkness with the light. And we've done it through the art of incrementalizing. It's actually become almost a religion for me, and it's the religion of incrementalism. It is very, very effective. Things are built up and they're destroyed incrementally, but I got to tell you, they come down a lot faster than they go up.
Wow.
Right.
So,
it can go down real fast.
Again, I'm sorry.
I have a question for Raj.
Yep.
Do you write your own material, or do you? I don't know the industry standards, so
100%. I don't have writers. My story is my life was funny enough, growing up, and everybody's is. You just don't look at it like the way there was a documentary that the Discovery Channel did before they turned into just doing ghost shows. It's called The Science of Comedy. And this said how comedians' brains are wired differently. So I see things. I remember stories from my childhood that the Jesus Christ football joke is 100% true, because I was being bullied, and my thought was, and this was advice that our parents used to give us back in those days: is if you can't beat them, join them. No, that's horrible, horrible advice. It's like, if you can't beat them, find other people that can't beat them too, because you guys are most likely going to be friends. So I was like, you know who's bullying me? All the football guys. So I'll play on the football team. That was my thing. But my freshman year, high school, I was a year younger than everybody. So I was 12 going into my freshman year of high school. And I was 5'3" and 96 pounds. And I thought, you know what? If I can just get on the team, I'll be a teammate and nobody will pick on me anymore. And I didn't realize I was giving them a 3-hour school-sanctioned, adult-supervised butt kicking of mine. But I remember I had to sit out the first week, and I talk about this on stage. I had to sit out the first week because I had to get my helmet from the junior high.
oh,
And I say this thinking about it now. I was like, don't you think that's when an adult should have stepped in when they placed that order from the junior high? Don't you think that a coach, somebody should have come up and be like, you're not built for this. You're built for this.
right.
But they paired me up with my buddy Michael Crawford. It's the first day of sports. Now, keep in mind, my parents are immigrants. I don't know anything about any activities because we didn't get to do activities. Because to them, it was a waste of time and a waste of money. You could be studying. That's why we read, because books are free. And my parents didn't have to spend anything on it. And then I found out football was state funded, and I'm going to be part of the team, and chicks like uniforms and football players. So all of this was the reasoning behind it. And then we went to tackling drills. Was when I got my helmet. I put my tiny helmet on my tiny head, and we went to tackling drills, and I got hit, and I was knocked unconscious. And when I came to, Coach Sarah Wolfskill, who this joke is about, and she's a friend of mine on Facebook, so I hope she's watching, my head was resting in her lap, but I couldn't see who it was because the sun was directly behind them. So all I saw was the outline of a body and blonde hair. And that was my first thought, is that I had died. And I was sitting in Jesus' lap. So that's where the whole thing of wanting to do activities. Like, I wanted to learn how to tap dance because my buddy would tap, and sometimes he would wear his tap shoes to school, and it looked fun. I wanted to be a Boy Scout, and I was one for 3 days until they handed my immigrant father a pamphlet that said he had to pay $65 for a uniform, and he didn't say anything to anybody. When he read the pamphlet, he quietly put it down, grabbed my hand, we walked out, and we never went back again. Wow. And I was doing a show in Addison, Texas, 3 months ago. I was at the Improv, and I tell that story, and this guy who's sitting kind of stage left, but second row, he goes, "Oh my God, you were in my troupe."
Oh my God, really?
That I was in for 3 days. He goes, for the next week after that, we kept wondering where you went. Now that was, I think I was 9. So that'd be 35 years ago. So 35 years later, here's a guy in the front row of one of my shows that I was in the Boy Scouts with for 3 days.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just, question for Rod. John Cleese says that people who are regarded as creative are not talented, but rather have a facility to get into the mood to create. How do you get into the mood? I go for a hike. I wrote my last hour, not the one that I currently have, but the hour before, I wrote in 4 days. Because I'd switched up, instead of going for hiking, I would go to the Sherman Oaks Park. and I would just do laps. And I just saw how things had generationally vastly changed from the playground to the parents, how everything had changed. And I wrote that whole thing in 4 days. And that's what I do. I mean, I think if you can get out and be around the majesty of just what we live in the world, like we take for granted, grass and trees and clouds and sun and wind. And if you can feel that sun on your face and you can get out and about and see beauty, I think it'll spark creativity. Not every comic has to be depressed, and not every comic has to suffer. If that's your path, then more power to you. But I just like the sheer joy that I get from making people laugh. So that's where my material comes from. That's where my creativity comes from. And a naturally creative person, have been since I was a kid.
I got it. I have a, if you scroll through the hundreds of videos on my Facebook page, Raj, I know we're friends on there now. I told you I have a programming team in Bangalore, India, and they've worked with me for 12 plus years now. But the one guy, the head guy, sends me this video the other day on WhatsApp, and I showed it to Glenn and I posted it on Facebook. And it was, in India, things are way different than in the United States. Like when they go in lockdown and they say don't leave home, they're not kidding. Like they're beating people with sticks on motorcycles.
Yeah.
I have the video to prove it. It's unbelievable.
The cops do that anyway. Now it's just being video. The cops there will beat you for any reason. Like they don't care.
It seems like you should share that, Ken. Do you have it locked and loaded? Can you share that?
I'd have to find it. I'd have to find it, but
yeah, they legitimately are. Like, I mean, the corruption and I've performed in India so many times. Bangalore is one of my favorite cities to perform in.
So I want to
speak Hindi and Punjabi.
I want to ask you something, Raj, if I may. I want to ask you: have you? Because I've certainly been through this, and I'm curious. Have you ever taken the stage on a day that was one of the most difficult of your life, and you had to create a mental override so that you were ready to deliver? Because if you had stayed in that mindset, it might have been tough to have people laugh.
I performed the day after my mother's funeral.
Oh, wow.
Got it.
I was at Hyena's in Dallas. I was at Hyena's the Mockingbird Station. And it was so interesting because I just went on and I said to myself, well, I'm going to do all of her favorite jokes, all the jokes that she loved of mine. And that's how I'm going to open my set with. And I know she's here. And I had an absolute blast.
Yeah.
It was very bittersweet because it was the first time I was talking about her in the past tense. And I got off, and a couple of the comics that had come in to see the show, comics would just stand in the back and watch. And they're like, we didn't think you were going to get through this. And I couldn't figure out, I'm like, why? And they're like, well, your mom's funeral was yesterday. And I was like, those were her favorite jokes. So I'm just going to honor her with doing her favorite bits. And she was she was a disciplinarian growing up. And I remember I told the story on stage. I was headlining the Addison Improv, and I think it was the first time I was headlining there. And my mom came with 16 of her girlfriends. And my mom was a very tiny lady, 5'3". She said 5'3". I think she was like 5'1". And she used to discipline us as kids. And I was doing the joke about her favorite methods, her favorite weapons of choice. And I go, if you don't believe me, she's right here. My mother stood up. We're sold out. My mother stands up and waves like she's the Queen of England. Beat him to the entire crowd, which gets almost a standing ovation. And now I can't follow my mom. So I had to end the show.
Now, on the day after her funeral, did you announce? Was it the day after the funeral or the day after she actually passed?
The day after. So she passed away on a Monday, and the funeral was Wednesday. I would talk to her on that Friday.
Okay.
She died of Canadian. I talked to her on that Friday, and she knew. She was like, "If you can," I said, "I'm coming home Tuesday because I have shows starting Thursday." She goes, if you can come home on Monday, that would be great. And I was like, I'm going to come home on Tuesday morning and I'll be here till July 4th. So we're good. And Monday night at 11:30 Dallas time, she passed.
Wow.
And then Tuesday I got in. Wednesday we did the funeral. Thursday night at 8 o'clock I was on stage.
So there's no right or wrong answer to this. I'm just genuinely curious. Did you tell your audience?
Yes.
I want to tell you as a brother, I can't recommend that highly enough. I never recommend avoidance. I never, because there's something very endearing about someone who will just tell the truth about what they're dealing with and what they're feeling. It humanizes them, whereas avoidance does not. And there is no connection. There's no connection that can take place between us and another human being, much less an audience, via avoidance. And so the greatest talk I've ever done, and I do a lot of these corporate talks, was a few years back that happened 90 minutes after I said goodbye to a friend of mine who had entered a vegetative state. Now, this is not a dark discussion tonight. We are here to uplift, but I was heartbroken because I knew that was my goodbye, and I will never see her physical body again. And what I did is cried all the way to San Diego from Temecula, and then shifted gears and decided to just speak my truth on stage. And I said, I had thoughts, because I never planned my talks, but I had thoughts about what I might discuss tonight. And I want to tell you, all of that went out the window earlier today. And here's why. And I began crying, and my entire talk was through my tears, all the way through it. And you know, it's not as though God accidentally installed tear ducts in men. Now, we were raised as children. We were taught by society that real men don't cry. But in fact, healthy men do. I don't know about real men, but I know that healthy men do. And so I just never figured that my tear ducts had been accidentally installed by the Creator. And I was so transparent, and I've never been more bombarded by emails from people that said, I was so deeply moved, and thank you for your authenticity that night. So I want to encourage everybody to feel their feelings with regard to what we're dealing with right now. Whatever you do, don't avoid them. Feel them fully, and in doing so, you'll heal yourself.
Yeah, and I got the same emails as well as you know, messages into my social media, because I did jokes about it, and it sounds weird saying jokes about your mother's funeral, but I was like, I started talking about. I told them that she had passed, and I started talking about how white people have funerals down. Like, you guys have it, like, you guys know how to funeral. Like, if Mexican people know how to
wait, I got to hear that again. You know how to funeral?
You guys put the fun in funeral. You guys do. White people put the fun in funeral. Because there's a wake, everybody's talking so politely about the person that's left. There's nostalgic stories, and they're like, I bet you he's playing 18 holes in heaven. We don't have any of that. Like everybody's crying like they just got diagnosed with cancer. And we have to wear all white. Whereas you guys figured it out, black is better. Because when I got done hugging every short Indian aunt of mine, every auntie who came over, it had looked like I had slammed like a clown had face slammed my chest. I'm like, and my first thought was so Indian. I'm like, well, I'll never be able to wear this again. What a waste of money. My mom's very estranged sister came through and hugged her casket. I'm not saying she hugged her. She hugged the casket. Like, that's a wingspan most people don't have, to fully hug a casket.
Wow.
So I just started telling these stories on stage, and it was so great. And people came up and they're like, you know, I never thought about the wake, and then thought about this, and my parent just passed away. I had one girl come up. She goes, I absolutely needed this. I lost my sister a few days ago, and I didn't want to leave the house. And then you came and you started talking about losing your mother the day before. And that just made my day. So that, again, like I said, the sheer joy I get out of entertaining, I can't put into words, and have never been able to.
You know, as we communicate, I also lost my first wife to cancer after 25 years of marriage, and I talk about that in the speeches. But it is not to, and I know that's not what we're talking about here. It is not to elicit sympathy from the audience.
Right.
And the audience is not my therapist, right? I mean, I can't use it for that.
Right.
But but it is a way to connect in a personal way and in a transparent way. And man, I couldn't agree more. People today are crying out for that because we have, for lack of a better term, we've got so many phonies. We've got so many macho dudes, telling us how we ought to be. And boy, we need sensitivity and transparency and realness now more than at any point, it seems to me.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because I was talking about when I said, like why did a coach say, you're not built for that. And it's in the bit where it said, you're not built for that. You're built for the clarinet. And it's on video. And that video has gone viral multiple times. It's gone viral on Reddit, I think 110 times. And 100 separate times it's gone viral. But the last show I did, I happened to be back in Texas. I was at the Arlington Improv. And I kid you not, because of that joke, a husband and wife who met in orchestra in college in the music program, who are both clarinet players, came to my show.
Yeah. Because
they wanted to show what clarinet players, they were just like, see, we're clarinet players. They just thought it was hilarious because they heard that part of the joke. They're like, we're going to his show. So
that to me is the key to a great story, right? I mean, it's the key to the story that Glenn told and that you tell, Raj. Ken, I've heard you tell, is that it's not that we connect with you because we see ourselves.
Right.
I mean, Raj, I connect with your story not because I had a bad experience in football in Texas, but because I had that experience in Indiana with basketball. But it's a shared experience, right? And so we see ourselves there, and I think that's part of why we're doing this show is that people all over the world can watch and can connect and can relate. We're from different backgrounds, different professions, but with authenticity, as Carrie says, and transparency. We could connect, and the world has never needed connection more than it does today.
Ken, maybe I need to explain sincerity and the concept of sincerity in Hollywood. Do I need to do that?
Sure.
It seems like I do. It feels like a natural segue.
Yeah.
The saying in Hollywood is that at the end of the day, it all comes down to sincerity. And once you learn to fake that, you've got it wired.
Right.
Brilliant.
So
I've talked about, and I'm very transparent about this, that I have 17 and a half years of sobriety.
Oh,
and I that's not me bragging. It's a gift. And so, but I remember maybe a year or two, I don't remember, but there's this comedian named Mark Lundholm and he's brilliant. The guy is absolutely brilliant. Well, he's in recovery as well. And he travels all over. He does a bit where he'll do like one night is only for recovery people in recovery. And then he'll do a night at the comedy club where it's open to everybody. And I went to this one, and I remember thinking, how funny could some dude that's in recovery be? And what's amazing though is it sets, it's what you're talking about. It's the real life stories that actually are hilarious if they're framed the right way.
Yeah.
Right. And he's talking about, he goes, one time I got locked up in a hospital, or I ended up in a hospital bed, and I was in a 3-point restraint. And he said, a 4-point restraint. He said, and for you normal people that don't understand what that means, it means that both of my wrists and my ankles were locked down to the bed, and I couldn't move. And he goes, so I'm able to sit up just a little bit and turn my head, and I look down the room I'm in, and there's this other guy in a bed, and he's in a 5-point restraint. Now, for you people that don't know what that means, that's both wrists, both ankles, and they have his head strapped down to the bed. He goes, and my first thought was, what a loser. It was one of it's just one of the funniest things I've ever heard, but it's real life, man, that brings humor. If you look at it right.
Absolutely.
That's where the expression "you can't write stuff this good" comes
There
from.
you Yeah.
I remember hearing a football coach back when I was in high school, and this kid had made a colossal blunder by fumbling the ball at the goal line. And as this kid's coming off the the turf, the coach says to him, "Son, to get to be a bigger idiot, you'd have to put on weight." I mean, and this is back. I'm a child of the 60s and 70s when people were not concerned about political correctness. And as the kid is walking away shamefully, he looks at him and says, "The kid's greener than a bullfrog's nipple."
Yeah.
And those are the things we remember for life. We just never forget them.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I remember I did when I did the CBS showcase, the CBS Diversity Showcase, a couple years ago, and in the audition, you're doing different sketch characters, and I really never done sketch. I just do stand up. So I converted all my jokes into the characters that they're off of, and I did my football. I did the Jesus joke as my old football coach, Coach Swan, who is just a character you can't write. He was a former hothead, did a lot of acid, was, long hair hippie, turned like Bible thumping Christian who would try to tell me how Stairway to Heaven was written by the devil. But I did that joke as him, and there's 3,000 people, 3,800 people auditioned, 3,800 applied, 2,200 auditioned, and we got 22 spots. And I got one of the spots. And it was my last sketch, my last impression was of my high school Texas football coach, because you couldn't write stuff like that. As Glenn said, you can't write stuff like that. And he'd always say when we were running to the field house, "Big hole goes in the back." Talking about your jockstrap. That was the only advice he would walk up and down halls and just, "Big hole goes in the back, boys." They're like, okay.
Can you slow that down so the audience can translate? Was it "big holes in the back"?
Big hole goes in the back.
Goes in the back.
For your protective underwear. And that was he thought he was giving you the best advice ever. And I'm like, this can't be real. I'm going to use this one day. And I used it for audition. So yeah, it's 100%. I heard all those things. It was so good.
I always loved the coach that would come up to you and pat you on the butt and say, "Good game, son, good game." And you'd go, "Coach, the season ended 6 months ago."
Oh my
God. And then as you looked at him, you went, "Come to think of it, I don't believe you even work here."
Aren't you Mike's dad?
All right.
Yeah, I had a coach that Coach Nal. I love that man. He was always eating. Always. He was always eating something. If it was, he taught health, or no, he taught biology. Taught biology, and he was always eating. He would, in the middle of an exam, leave, and then you'd see him come back in and walk in, and he'd have 2 hot dogs in his hand. And I'm like, the cafeteria is not even open.
Where do you get those?
He brought that with him. And I was like, if I ever do like a TV show, if I ever write in my head a TV show about a high school, I'm going to have that coach that's always eating. And it just stuck in my head. And we would be walking to the football field, and then he's got a bag of chips that he's eating. I've never not seen that man eat. And so those are all the characters in life. And my funny family, my mom would say things that were horribly off color, and she wouldn't realize it. She was trying to tell me about a girl because, the arranged marriage thing was still very much in their head, which I wasn't a big fan of, but she has a picture of this girl. And she's like, "I'm not going to show you. You're going to want to marry her immediately. I'm not going to show you this picture at all." And I was like, "Let me just see it." She goes, "No, she's so pretty. She looks like a rubber doll." And I was like, "You mean China doll?" And she goes, "Same thing." I was like, "No, there's a big thing." Yeah, so and my
buddy of mine from Kentucky and I were having a conversation about the worst things we ever heard from our coaches, because neither one of us are that athletic. He said, "I had the worst track coach in history." And what's the stupid thing that he said? He said, "The only thing he ever told us was, you boys keep turning left, get back as quick as you can." There you
I
go.
love it. I love it.
I thought it was kind of profound, but he thought it was bad and nice.
Hey, Ken, I want to give a couple of shout outs. I noticed my friend Joan Anton is sitting in with us tonight from Pennsylvania. Hi, Joan. And Lynn, hi, darling, from Los Angeles. Don, I see you. Don Stokes, you're out there. We've got a lot of people that are part of this tonight on this inaugural outing. Lorraine, thanks for coming here. I got a lot of my students from the Dallas and LA workshop. So thank you all for being a part of tonight.
I want to say hi to my pal Charles Coachman, who just had the thing about the underwear there. He is one of the folks that's been a part of a mastermind group that I have, and so some other folks here as well. So thanks to all of our fans that are watching. This is really terrific on our inaugural show here. So thank you for supporting that.
And hopefully in the very near future, everyone will begin to understand their role in this, that we do. We're fully capable of just yammering endlessly without any help from the audience, but we want your help. We want your thoughts and your ideas. So please, if you've got something that's on your mind, or you think that is in the really the pulse beat of the world right now that needs to be discussed, or you want to see it discussed, please bring it up and we will air it out live.
So I have a question for Glenn that kind of, having a comedian on with us tonight. But, I think about all of the conversations that we've had, whether online or offline, and you are actually one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And so I'm curious if you've ever thought about it, or if it's been intentional in any way. You've had an unbelievable career in movies and television. And my question for you is how important, how much of a role has comedy played in your success as an actor?
Well, for starters, Ken, when someone refers to an actor as unbelievable, you don't know if that's a compliment or a dig.
Well, the jury.
Never thought about it like that.
So rephrase this for me now.
You've just had an amazingly good career, great career.
Are you wondering maybe how it took a dramatic turn instead of comedy?
No, I'm wondering how much comedy has, because you're funny. And I don't mean funny looking, you're funny. So like how much has comedy played a role in the success in your career as an actor?
It's played a big role. I got to tell you, when I first came to LA, my very first job in California back in fall of 1977, I wound up booking, and I'd only been in town for a couple of months. So I was pretty excited about the pace that I seemed to be on. And I attribute that, as I've shared with you before, that it had a lot to do with not having gone to Los Angeles to pursue a career, but rather going there to have one. And that was my mindset, is I'm not here to pursue anything. Let others pursue. I'm here to have. And the first job that I was gifted with, well, if you think about it, no one tonight will be pursuing dinner, right? They're going to have dinner. And the reason they use the word pursue is we tend to use the word pursue when we're referring to things we don't expect to catch, or we hope to catch them, but don't really expect to. So I went with this overly optimistic mindset for a young man of 18. And my first job was with Angie Dickinson in an episode of Policewoman and Earl Holliman. But then the second one made all of my Texas peeps were so proud because I booked a 2-episode gig on the Dukes of Hazzard. And that was funny because I was able to just go in and do impressions of every single person I spent any kind of time around growing up in Texas, and I have been known to do this guy, right? And this is one of my favorite characters that I do. And it's just been, I don't know exactly where it turned and became harder edged, but I do attribute my father, my stepfather, Harry Morshower, that raised me. I really attribute the vast majority of the success I've encountered to him. And it's for this reason. He taught me the gift, and he never sat down and said, son, here's how it is. He didn't do that. He did it the stronger way, which is that he modeled it for me. But he taught me the gift of presence. And I would watch him as a kid. He would walk into the delicatessen on a Sunday morning, and everything would fall silent because he had arrived. And it was his presence, and his presence would change a room. And I was fascinated by it. I never realized that he was giving me life coaching because of the career I would eventually head into. And then he also he spent several years in the Navy, which is where that commanding officer presence originated. And so I really just, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2005. But Pop, that's what I always called him. Pop, thank you for changing my life and teaching me about presence and about prosperity. His favorite saying was, son, rich or poor, it's good to have money. He had one more he used to say. He'd say, he goes, I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better. That's a Harryism.
That is true. That is true. Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Samuel just said, wow, you were on the Dukes too. I was kind of shocked to hear that the other night. That
You're
was,
talking about stand-up, and do you want to tell them the Michael Bay story?
Are you talking about the phone call from Michael?
No, when you were on set, I think you told him.
Yeah. Well, that one I can't tell. It's but I can just say this about Michael. We had done 3 films together. We did Pearl Harbor, followed by a film called The Island, and then we did Transformers. And then he reached out to me to offer me Transformers 2. And we're on the phone together, and he goes, dude, I want to work together again. And we're starting to shoot Transformers 2 2 weeks from now. And I want to work together again, which will be our 4th film to do. And I said, I know you're kidding me. And he goes, no, I'm not kidding. I said, of course you are. He goes, Glenn, I don't have time to go back and forth. I want you in the movie. Are you in or are you out? I said, Michael, of course I'm in. I just have one question. Does it in any way bother you that I died in the first one? He said, no, it doesn't at all. And then he said that continuity is for wussies. So it really didn't. Anyway, I just thought it was funny that he brought me back from the dead. And he said, we're going to change the character's name. And we're also going to change your rank. Wow, that didn't occur to me. So I got the script and the new name of the character. I was a sergeant in the first one, and now I'm a general, and the character's name is General Morshower. And I'm looking around like, am I being punked? What's going on here? But it was real, and I owe a tremendous salute of gratitude. Thank you, Michael Bay, because we've done 6 films together, 4 Transformers and those other 2 movies, and he's a good buddy of mine, and I'm grateful because he's changed my life a lot.
Where the Pearl Harbor was double booked.
Oh, that. Okay, well, I can only tell the condensed version because I can whip that out quickly. It's just that I got down to Corpus Christi, where we shot the film aboard the USS Lexington. I didn't know which Michael Bay story. Obviously, having done 6 movies, I've acquired a lot of Michael Bay stories. Yeah. But this was on the very first one, and we're doing Pearl Harbor, but I haven't reported to set yet because as soon as I get there, it's on a Saturday, and I'm due to be on set Monday morning. And the call sheet comes out on Sunday, and I see that there's my name and the character's name, which was Admiral Bull Halsey. I still remember that. And there was a Beatles song. Remember Admiral Halsey built a fight. Right. Yeah. So Admiral Bull Halsey, a real life human being, and there's another actor that's playing the same role. And we don't see Bull Halsey twice in the movie at 2 different ages. So we either have a typo or Houston, we have a problem. It's one of the 2. Well, it turns out they had double cast the role. And I got a note on Sunday night that the producer wanted to talk to me on the phone Monday morning. So this is the end of the story. He calls me and says, we have a problem where the role has been double booked. And Michael still wants you to come down, but we're going to have the other guy play Admiral Halsey. And I thought, what? I just don't understand why you waited to tell me this in Corpus Christi. What do you want me to do? And he said, Michael, we'll figure that out. So I went to set having no idea why I was going to go down there, and was given 2 flags to hold and signal. And I'll back up to show you. This is my entire performance now from the movie. And I did this also. And then I waved planes forward, and he gave me a couple of lines. And Michael told me that the reason he wanted me back was because of how I had handled what could have been viewed as a huge disaster, and that I was a gentleman about it. So here we sit, 6 films later, and 3 rides at Universal Studios LA, Orlando, and then also overseas. And that's in Singapore. And so now we've, so it's not just what hand we're dealt, but how we play it that can change the entire trajectory of our future. And that's the takeaway from that story.
Yeah.
Man, that's a perfect example of it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you right there.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
It is. So we got just about 9 minutes left here. I want to see if we have any other questions. Alan Skidmore has a question for Raj. Raj, what are your thoughts on that?
There are some. My philosophy on that is be who you are how you are on stage is who you are off stage. There's no act. I'm just a laid back guy. I'll make you laugh. I'll have a beer with you. But there are people that when they hit the stage, it is a character, and that character comes to life. And when they're done, they're wildly different than they are on stage. And I've seen it, and I've seen it a lot. It still happens. And if that's their, somebody was talking about like Superman wore a suit, and that was taking off the suit, he became Superman. And for some people, that's their taking their suit off. Is when they walk on stage, now they're Superman. And for me, I'm just the person that's sitting here talking to you guys, the people that are watching. I'm just that guy. We're all attention whores. That's why we stand in front of thousands of people asking them to love us for a bit that we wrote. But I'm an extra. I mean, like, I love to talk to people. I want to get to know your story. If you ever come see my show, I talk to the crowd a lot, because if I'm going to tell you about me, I want to at least learn about you as well, because everybody's got a story to tell, in my opinion. And so I want to hear that story.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Glenn, what have you found with, to piggyback on Alan's question, what have you found with, and Scott, you too, because you're around a lot of professional speakers, and I've met a ton of professional speakers. I'm a moving on up speaker. What have you found with people in your industry that are very public facing when it comes to being in front of a camera or on stage? Have you found that they're kind of introverted or extroverted?
You want to go ahead? A guy named Scott?
Well, when it comes to professional speakers, I think you would probably find that a lot of us are, I don't know if you call it introverted, but probably private, because so much of what we do, our living is made on stage in front of a lot of people, meeting people at the receptions and the work that we do. That's just part of the gig. You're always, I mean, the way you get compensated is to be on the stage. And I think because of that, you value your private time. So I don't know that it's that we're different. I think it's that what we do is to take that core personality that we have and then extend it in a bigger way with bigger audiences, if that makes sense. So, yeah. For example, when my wife and I had dinner with Zig Ziglar, Zig was not getting down on one knee and pointing up and saying, "I'll see you at the top," right, over the fillet. He was very quiet and very thoughtful, but he was still the same essence. And I think that's part of it, is that for many of the speakers I know, it's that we are more private, we are a little bit more quiet, but the people I worry about are the people that feel like they have to be on all the time, who never have peaks and valleys and the variance. So that's where I come down on that.
Yeah, and we've all experienced that in show business. But I wrote a chapter the whole chapter was devoted to this very thing. Many years, this chapter was written probably 15 years ago, and it was called The Presentational Self, and it wasn't limited just to actors. I have been of the opinion for years that more often than not, folks do not present who it is they really are. They tend to present who it is they want you to think they are.
Yes.
And that's how people meet often in the dating world, and they meet basically under false pretenses.
Right.
So someone is creating a facade, and they meet someone else who is equally guilty of creating a facade. And so they get to know the people they're not, as opposed to getting to know the people they are. And then after a few months, you can't suppress your truth anymore. I have a phrase, people leak. So they leak who it is they really are. And all of a sudden they look and go, who are you? And the other one says, I was just getting ready to ask you the same question.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot easier if we go ahead and leak as the starting act. Like, let's start with just leaking who it is we are. Let's identify ourselves very quickly, because I think it makes the decision-making process a lot easier. If you show me who it is you really are, it's easier for me to identify whether or not we have a match. And then we don't need to waste a lot of time on that. And so I'm just a big fan of transparency. I love when people can go out and stand naked, not literally, but stand naked emotionally and be vulnerable in front of an audience. And, this is the very reason that I've done my seminars the way I do them, because I want to come from what's real and what's so and what's truth. And a lot of times that includes airing out certain things that might otherwise be private, but it certainly endears you to people. And invariably, I got to tell you, when you lead from your heart, the vast majority of people return serve beautifully.
Yes.
Wow.
And if you lead with nonsense, you shouldn't be surprised when nonsense is what circles back to pay you a visit.
We reap what we've planted, right?
Yeah.
Amen.
That's what it's about. I've got a buddy, Chris Brogan, that's a noted author and speaker, and he's got this great thing about social media as it applies to our lives, which is kind of the same thing as a similar thing of what we're talking about. And he says, really, we've all become like professional wrestlers. We use our own names, but we have this character that we play, for social media and life, and then the real person. And I think there's something to that when we go to Instagram or we go to Twitter, that every picture we look perfect. And it's like the old portrait, warts and all. That's what is meaningful and lasting. Do you see that, Ken? What's your take?
I think, you see there's these, and I'm not picking on millennials, so no hate mail. But you see these young kids that are 25 or even a little bit older. And I get it. We all at 20, 25 years old, first, we know everything. Second, we want to rule the world. All of us have been there where it's like, okay, Scott's like, man, I do have the best voice in the world, and I'm going to show the world, right? And you do, but like, it takes time to develop the whole person, the whole being, the whole everything, right? But you see these kids on Instagram that are out. I mean, there are private jet companies that you can go rent a private jet for 1 hour for like whatever it is, just to sit in it and do a photo shoot. And they're like, for whatever it costs, $1,000, $2,000, I don't know how much it costs, because I would never do it. But like, people do, or they go rent to sit in and stand near a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, or they
do it here in Vegas. You bet. I know speakers that have had their picture taken with a Rolls Royce here in Vegas.
It's like, and you're posting that stuff on social media, and it blows me away. So I love transparency. That's why I talk about being in recovery. That's why I talk about everything that my life is about. It's be real, be you, and look, you'll find your tribe. Your tribe will come to you. Like, you're too many people trying to force that square peg into a round hole, and it's like, dude, just be you, be real, and let life be more natural. Don't try to force it.
Yeah.
A mentor of mine used to talk about the time he got mad at a meeting because this 18-year-old kid got up to sing "My Way." He said, at 18, you ain't got a way yet.
Scott, that reminds me, and I know we only have about 30 seconds left, but that reminds me, I remember hearing a kid once who was 12 who dared to use the expression. He was talking to a friend of his, and he said, back in the day,
Oh,
and I just stood there astonished. Like, you have to be a certain age before you're even entitled to use that expression.
Yeah. Here's a good one. The 18-year-old life coach.
Yeah.
Same idea. Hey, Ken, I think we got to say goodbye, brother. We got.
Hey. We're at the end, yeah. So thank you, everybody. Raj Sharma, dude, you're a rock star. Thank you. Raj, you were the very first guest on this monumental show, and we are so grateful and thankful for you, brother.
It was an honor again. Just thank you so much for having it. Thank you for thinking of me, Glenn, and it was wonderful to meet you guys, and now I've got 2 new friends. So
thanks for blessing us with your presence, and we will be back next Sunday night. Yes, Ken, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, and 5 Pacific time.
So I'm going to end this with an outro with our video. We'll see you guys next Sunday. Thank you so much to everyone who shared this out. The love, the laughter, everything. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.
Happy Easter, guys.
Happy Easter.
Easter.